This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Isotope, Atom Audio, Native Instruments, Lewitt, Spectra 1964, and OWC. You're hearing my voice right now on the Lewitt Pure Tube microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX 100D mic pre and C610 complementer mixed with Isotope RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar, all recorded safely onto an OWC SSD and mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the link in the show notes. It's a great way for you to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
Just write, because no one has your perspective but you. No one sees the world like you. No one will phrase the words like you. You have to not only create the work, then put it out in the world for people to see. And it's hard because it feels like how people talk about children. You know, it's like, oh, this song feels like my heart is beating outside of my body, walking around, and somebody could hurt it. And it's like, yeah, you'll have critics, but put it out in the world.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey rock stars, have you checked out Native Instruments recently? Look, no matter what style of music you make, Native Instruments gives your studio everything you need, from drums, loops, and beats to the coolest synths, realistic strings, guitar amps, and futuristic synth pads. I personally love recording and tracking real bands in my studio, but then also adding awesome overdubs from Battery, Contact, Massive X, Super 8, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid Keys, for example. Go pick up Complete Start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples over at nativeinstruments.com and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Some restrictions apply. Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs, whether you're setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class full-size studio for professional mixing and mastering in stereo or immersive sound. Featuring the XART tweeter and custom DSP onboard processing, the A-series monitors will perfectly adapt to your studio. Get the Atom Audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for you with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, the podcast bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Katrina Stone, a songwriter and music producer, recently moved to Nashville from Los Angeles. She's moved here to a countryside studio just on the outskirts of Nashville, creating soulful pop music, which has landed her performance residencies at the Universal CityWalk stage and Margaritaville. She's gained international attention through scoring, brand endorsements, performing on national stages like the Vans Warped Tour, and earning critical praise for her songwriting, heard in advertisements, trailers, movies, and TV shows around the world. I met Katrina on a flight to Los Angeles for NAMM 2023, and we connected over many things, including songwriting, producing, family life, and the freedom to live and make music outside of a sometimes suffocating urban environment. And also just, connected on things like, when's this plane going to take off and when are we landing? So I'm very excited to talk with Katrina today about making some really killer pop music as a songwriter, as a producer, as an engineer, as somebody with a home studio who knows what they're doing. Please welcome Katrina Stone to Recording Studio Rockstars. Katrina, are you ready to rock?
I am so ready to rock.
So it was great to meet you on the flight, and it was fun chatting about stuff. And I forgot to mention, I guess we both ended up at that cool event in LA, the Endorse Expo, when we got there. We were headed to the same music event, Rockstars.
It's fate.
It's fate, yeah. So give us a little bit more of an intro to who you are in your own words. I mean, that was a pretty brief introduction. I know you as somebody who, we've got a playlist of your music in the show notes, so you can check that out, Rockstars. Some great sounding songs. But I sort of understand that you're a songwriter, you're producing and composing music in your studio. I'm sure you're working with a ton of other people as well. And you've also had successes getting that music placed, right? So that it's used in sync licensing for TV and film and advertising.
Yeah. So I kind of stumbled into the sync world. I started as an artist, typical artist, early 20s, wanted to be signed to a record label, live the dream, all of those things. And then I was going to different studios to have my music created. It obviously cost a ton of money. Even back then it was, because I won't give my age. I won't date myself here. But I was paying a ton of money to all these guys, basically recording out of their bedrooms or in really small studios. And I thought, okay, I have got to find a way to do this for myself. And I wasn't in sync at all at that point. I wasn't in licensing. I was just trying to play shows, book tours, things like that. And it got to a point where my favorite producer moved away. And I was like, it was the end of my world. I was like, what am I going to do now? And, oddly enough, this sounds very strange, but a tornado kind of came over our house, and we got a little bit
Los Angeles?
Oh no, this was in Colorado at the time.
Oh, this is in Colorado.
That would be so bizarre. And we got a little bit of insurance money to fix our roof, had a little left over, and I was like, I'm going to buy Pro Tools, get a little tiny setup just so I can demo. That's like how it always starts, right? I'm just going to demo stuff so that real producers can take it over. And then it kind of morphed into this obsession where I was like, oh, I can do a little more than demo now, at that point it was, I was rewiring Reason to Pro Tools and I was starting to make tracks and, just like the real basics of it and realizing I could do this. And, eventually ended up in Los Angeles and, sorry to offend any of your listeners, but I switched to Logic. And,
no, Logic is cool. Logic gets used a ton here in Nashville, particularly through the schools, because I think schools look at it and they're like, oh, we can get this single price thing. It comes with everything.
One thing.
People can learn right on it and do all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. It's wonderful for the songwriter because you just kind of jump in and start creating a song right away. And that's where I think that first year in Los Angeles, I put my music up on some kind of micro licensing website and I saw those dollar signs coming in and I was like, hold on. I could build everything around this. And so we basically did. Me and my friend created all these different brands and things. And we have toured off of that money. We basically started our own kind of label from it because we had all these sources from sync pouring in money that we could afford to do the things that a label would normally pay us for.
Now, is this with the guy in The Likes of Us?
Yes. His name is Bench Hurd. He is a killer producer, writer, artist, performer, all of it. And so you could say when I moved out there, because I had to start over, I was in Pro Tools and I feel like Logic was very different. I kind of pseudo interned for him. And so he kind of brought me up to speed on Logic and like, well, in Pro Tools, it would be this, but in Logic, this is what it is. And so I've learned a tremendous amount from him. And we're still working together. We're at this camp this week and we're plugging away on some more music, for sync and performance and all that. So
that's cool. So did you find yourself like permanently switching from Pro Tools to Logic and now you just think in Logic? You think logically now?
I think logically. On Sunday mornings at church, I will still have to mix broadcast in like the broadcast stream from church in Pro Tools, and it definitely feels backwards for me. Now that I've been in Logic for so long. But I can still function in Pro Tools. There's still some things I really love about Pro Tools, even some, stock plugins that I really enjoyed more. And in the beginning, I found myself bouncing stuff out of, like stemming out to Pro Tools so that I could go use the things I was familiar with and then dropping them back into Logic before he could see, so it was a slow transition. I couldn't just drop it entirely, but now everyone I work with works in Logic, so it's an easy transition.
Yeah, I mean, I mess around with all the DAWs. Pro Tools is my first language, so to speak, And then I learned the other DAWs, kind of like learning a language when you go to your favorite restaurant, enough to order off the menu. But one of the things that I always loved about Logic is, as a place for a composer, it's like, boom, instant studio. You've got instruments, you've got drums, you've got like, if you want to just
everything.
have an instant drum track, you've got it. And then, but also for mixing, like they did one of the most clever things I've seen anywhere, which is their compressor plugin, because you can put that on a track and then you can immediately like flip between all the compressor options and see if one just kind of turns you on.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And, each one of them, we were just talking about this, each DAW has its own thing that they did very, very well. You could tell somebody focused on it. And then it has their shortcomings. And so we were just saying, I wish somebody would come out and make like a master DAW and take all the best parts of all of them. And I know they're trying, but like there's some shortcomings with any of them, where you find out you're like, I can't solo. I just found out the other day in Pro Tools, you can't solo. What was it? You can't solo a bus, like an effects bus. Or, I can't even remember. Somebody was mentioning.
You can do solo safes and stuff like that. Well, the thing that frustrates me is there's no quick key for turning off all the solos.
Oh,
so like
really?
If you have 5 things soloed in your session and you're like, take me out of solo so I can just hear the whole song.
You have to click through all of them.
You have to like click through all of them, or you have to, option click, or you have to go up to the top and click on the master solo button. But I'm like, where's the quick key? Maybe you can put one in the commands, and I haven't checked that, But stuff like that is so important. It's so funny how when you start out learning these tools, right? The first thing you have to learn is just how to do it and how to go with the mouse and do it. And then as soon as you know how to do that, you're like, all right, now just give me a key so I never have to leave the keyboard and I can do everything as fast as possible.
Yeah, exactly. That's crucial.
Yeah. Well, so let's see. So you started out as an artist, and then you found yourself after the tornado swept you away in your ruby slippers.
Yes.
Sorry, that's Kansas, not Colorado.
So close.
but you landed in LA, and then you started making music there. Rewinding for just a sec, when you were doing the artist thing, do you remember what your feelings were about, like, what would be a version of success?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of ingrained in me that making it was being famous and having a record deal, having people that took care of all the logistics. That was making it. And that even to this day, I'll have people say, I really wish you would make it. And I'm like, honey, I have made it 5 times over. Like, and because there's not that fame associated with it, I think people think I'm, this kind of struggling producer, artist, whatever, and I'm like, oh, you don't know it, but you've heard my voice. You've heard my voice a lot.
That's wild. That's cool.
So it's like, now I think I've shifted a little bit because I am also a homeschool mom to an amazing 13-year-old daughter.
Well done.
And,
congrats.
A wife. We're trying to build a house, and so I've got, this version of success. I think now it's shifted a lot to being sort of quietly successful. Yeah. Can I have all the benefits of being big in the music industry without the fame? Which is really the best of both worlds if you think about it. I don't have to worry about protection as much and like, is somebody going to come after me? Are they going to know where I live or anything like that? But my voice has been everywhere. And in a way, it's like I have the benefits of both worlds, honestly. It's perfect.
That's pretty wild. So do you have that experience of just sort of, walking through the grocery store and there you are coming out of the speakers?
Weirdly,
like where
yes.
are places where you hear your voice and you're like, oh, there I am.
Yeah, grocery store, at Lowe's. I've heard it at Lowe's. Weirdly, I heard it at a Build-A-Bear once. Someone messaged me and said they just heard it in a CVS, like as in-store radio. And then I'll get messages like, were you in the Benbridge commercial for like diamonds? And I was like, I don't know. And then I look it up and I was like, yes, I was. So wow. I don't even know part of the time where it's going. I have to continually set out like Google searches, and then I'll go on like, I think it's like Tune Find or something, and see the shows that I've been in, because I don't know. Most of the shows, like I don't watch, like, Temptation Island and stuff. So I just have no idea. But I have had that experience where I was watching a show that I genuinely liked. I was watching Selling Sunset. It's so terrible, but it's such a fun show. And my voice came on and I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. Like, how crazy. I'm watching Selling Sunset and there I am, like, so it's a pretty wild experience the first time it happens,
So when you're describing hearing your voice on something, does that mean you produced a particular track, or you sang on a track and you just it had been a minute, so you forgot it? Or is it something where your voice could be reused on something in a way that sounded brand new to you? Can you kind of explain that a little?
I think it's just because I have such a large catalog that some of the times, and because I write for other people, I hear it and I don't immediately think, oh, that's me, because I've made so much music over the years and I've written so much, that it takes a second. It really does. And it can't be necessarily reused. I mean, they can chop up stems in a way that they want to. They can make, music supervisors can make acoustic versions of our songs with the stems if they want to. But I've made so much music under different names and my own name that it takes a second. Like the first time I saw a commercial and I heard this instrumental track, and I was like, that really sounds like something I know. And it was for like a weird foot exfoliator that's like something not very glamorous. It wasn't glamorous at all. And I was like, I remember I Shazammed it. And it was an instrumental to like one of my songs with Benj, with Likes of Us. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Like, I've made so much music at this point that it's like, I didn't immediately recognize it, but I was like, that's really cool. Like, I should have thought of that. And I was like, I did think.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. And I've had some experiences like that. I remember being over at Home Depot and I'm hearing something like, wait a minute, that sounds so familiar. And then I might remember that it was an album that I was an assistant engineer on or something
that's
like
cool.
that. I was like, oh yeah, right on. Which is a good feeling.
I love that. It's like, it's like getting heard, stuff you made 10 years ago or something, and it's still out there, like, and people are enjoying it. It's like the soundtrack to their shopping at Home Depot or shopping at CVS. Yeah. It's so fun.
Yeah. And then sometimes I hear something and I'm like, wait, did I do that? And then I'm like, oh no, it just reminds me of something.
Yep. I love that.
Well, very cool. So you went out to LA and you guys started doing it. So what is it like if you were trying to explain to somebody, which I'm sure you've done at this point? I think you even said you're joining us from a cool songwriting camp today, which is awesome, inspiring. But if you were trying to explain to somebody what it means to sort of get started in creating music for licensing and for sync use, if that's the right terminology, how would you describe that?
Well, I think I approach this a little bit differently than a lot of the classes that you'll take online about this subject. Because I've actually kind of trained a lot of people to do this. And the first thing to do is actually to get yourself set up with a small little, in the corner of your room or whatever, home studio.
It's funny. We love home studios on this show.
Yes. It's what do you know? Even
You're
if
in the
it's
right place.
The smallest little desk and you've got an old laptop, and at first maybe you're just mixing in some headphones that you bought used, like cutting your overhead, because for sync, you're going to need, it's not one song that's going to break you. It might be one out of the 20 that you submitted, but you have to submit 20 to get there. So you have to start learning to record yourself and make your own music. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It could be instrumentals. It could be acoustic guitar and a voice, but that step will never lead you wrong. Actually, if you're an artist and you're a songwriter, knowing how to record yourself is so vital nowadays. So writing for sync is, once you have some setup, it's just about paying attention. What songs do you notice when you watch TV?
So a thought that comes to mind, I remember early on learning, hearing somebody say, did record labels, only like 8% of record labels rosters actually recoup the records. And they're the artists that carry all the other artists that are on the record labels. And I remember thinking that was really shocking as a, understanding of this whole career path that I was like jumping into, but it's also an interesting reminder of what you just said, which is like that sort of, well, I guess there's the 80-20 rule. This is more like the 8-92 rule or something.
No kidding.
But I mean, like that sort of applies to making your own music too. If I'm hearing you correctly, it's like you got to make a bunch of stuff and a certain amount of that will will
Yes.
be the song that lands and connects with an
And
opportunity.
you can learn from that one song. Why did this one land? Okay, it started percussive. Maybe there was a lot of like clapping and snapping in the intro. And then maybe I was really belting in the chorus. And I used, instruments that are more in trend right now, maybe not ukuleles anymore or something. Like
Right.
you learn from each one, and then you're like, you can almost make sound-alikes of your own music and replicate.
Ukuleles and whistling, is that still in or is that out now?
I think you can get by with some whistling, if you kind of do a little bit of, throw a little distortion on there and some reverb. It can still be cool.
Nice.
But you know what? Ukuleles are going to come back. They are. I believe this.
All right. Howdy, rock stars. I've got a secret to tell you about how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars. My secret is using Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar to make this podcast sound great. Right now, you're hearing RX breath control, declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, Ozone multiband compression, Neutron EQ, and limiting, all from Isotope. Go to isotope.com and use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off. My studio is proudly powered by OWC, and I love how it's improved my workflow. OWC can connect all your audio work drives, trackballs, mix controllers, MIDI keyboards, audio interfaces, displays, or cameras so that you can work fast and focus on making your best record ever. Go look at the Mini Stack STX, Thunderbay 4, or Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at maxsales.com/rockstars to find the perfect solution for your studio from OWC. And thanks for using our custom link in the show notes. I don't know if you were ever following other ukulele players, but there was a YouTube artist named Julia Nunez, if I'm remembering her name correctly, who was like blowing up on YouTube for doing little ukulele covers from her dorm room. And then after she had the success, she showed up in my studio at Bonnaroo because we did the backstage studio. And I was like, yes, there's so somebody
cool.
who started on ukulele and saw enough success that they got to tour and end up at Bonnaroo, which was cool.
I love that. Yeah. Man, good for her.
Yeah. So let's see. So doing a ton of stuff in a home studio setting. What about, what advice as far as the microphones and stuff like that? Do you think that people can pretty much start out with a single mic and so they can capture their voice?
Yeah.
And, play an acoustic or whatever?
I have made hundreds of thousands of dollars off of like an $89 MXL mic. And I've upgraded since, but I am telling you that that shouldn't stand in your way. And I definitely let it kind of stand in my way in the beginning as I was looking at making purchases. And I was like, oh, they're going to hear right through me. And it was like, I had an M box, like those little M box that, and I had an MXL. I think I got it on sale. I didn't even have a mic stand. I would hold it. I didn't even have a pop filter, and probably did that for a couple of years. And those songs have made so much money. And
That's
so
great.
The truth is you have to move forward. You have to push forward and actually do it, So, and you can upgrade as you go. Like, obviously, like I've upgraded quite a bit since then, just because I'm really starting to learn what my voice sounds like and what I want to hear from things. But it shouldn't stop anyone from pulling the trigger, honestly.
It's funny. I have my old Pro Tools rig is once again living on the dining room table, wondering where it's going to go next. And I look at that and I don't even know if I could give it away at this point. In fact, I've tried unsuccessfully, but it made more, I think it, like your microphone, it made me more money in my studio for the records that it did than the newer stuff has,
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a funny thing about the gear, our connection to the gear. And I mean, I do believe in, giving ourselves nice tools because we're artists too. And I mean, we have money is one measurement of success at what we do. And another one is how we just personally feel about it as artists. And so we get driven to want to
Mm.
I just want to get the bass a little bit better on this next one,
Yeah. And so you upgrade a little bit and you kind of upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. And, you don't have to start with pro level anything. Like you can just get going. Like I've heard records that have been recorded in GarageBand that I've been like, wow, how is this possible? With USB microphones and, there's a whole spectrum of things out there. And at the end of the day, it's just about capturing your vision the best that you possibly can with the tools that you have and putting it out into the world. It's like the first step,
And make sure it's good.
Yeah.
Make
Try
sure
not
it's a
to be
good, cool
sucky.
song also. Yeah. Try not to suck.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. What's next? So, you set up a home studio. You're out in LA doing your thing. What about the next step of sort of creating the tracks and then connecting with an opportunity? And, what do you want to share about that journey and that story of finding the right kind of people to start working with and just delivering on those opportunities?
That's interesting because I'm in that part right now. So I started in what you might call micro licensing. So it's smaller placements. It's everything from like a wedding video that's going up on YouTube to maybe some regional commercials, maybe a commercial internationally that you're never going to see in France. It's not going to make you any money on the back end. And through doing that for probably 10 years and making a good living at it, another opportunity's come up, and I'm not going to say the name of the company. I don't want to like necessarily spoil that, but it's more what you might call like more major licensing. It's your NFL commercials. It's more primetime TV shows, things like that. And so it's kind of given me an opportunity to venture into that world a little bit. And obviously, the standard just keeps getting higher and higher for those songs because now you're talking about big money coming in for these commercials, like 100,000, 200,000 and things like that. And so you really want to make sure that you're doing a good job. And so I partnered up with 3 other guys. We're all producers, songwriters, singers, artists, and we've kind of formed this little conglomerate. I don't even know what you would call us at this point. Team Matrix 2.0. That's funny because one of my guys works with Lauren Christie from The Matrix. Yeah. So I immediately knew what you were talking about. So
Well, we said we weren't going to date ourselves, but
yes. So we're moving forward with, like, we're kind of in that mass production phase again. Like we had a camp here in Brentwood, Tennessee in March, and it was a week long. We busted out 34 tracks with vocals. We wrote them as well, and all genres. Nice. It was all over the place. So my EP was more like gritty pop,
So wait, let's back up a little bit. So when you say we had a camp and then we busted out 34 tracks, break that down a little bit. Are you describing a kind of event that our audience might want to know about because they might want to go to a camp like this, or like is it a thing where all the students come together and everybody has to write a song and it's a communal writing thing? What is it?
Well, we actually kind of started it. So it's a little bit almost like invitation only. I know other publishing companies and stuff will do these camps, like BMG does camps. They'll even do them kind of virtually, but your focus is to really focus in that week or those 3 days or whatever it is. And this was more camp-like. We stayed here, we ate here, like we lived and breathed this stuff for 5 or 6 straight days.
That's the only way to make records as far as I'm concerned.
I think so. Those like short sprints are everything, and then we had 3 rooms, sometimes 4 rooms set up, and not just for writing. I know writing rooms are like a big thing here in Nashville, but these were like, we were producing out tracks and writing them at the same time. Sometimes the song would come first, sometimes the track was started first. And the expectation was that after 3 or 4 hours, each room would have some demo of something, a completed song. Because each room had, some sort of goal that they were trying to reach. So that we did that. And then we would, after lunch, we would switch rooms, switch writers, producers, and we would do it all over again. And we just started it because nothing really existed like that for us. So in the last year, that's what we've been doing. That sounds
like fun.
It's so much fun.
So
there's so much focus.
Quick questions too. What are the tools in a room like that? Is it like laptop, speakers, couple of pairs of headphones, one vocal mic.
Yeah, at least one or two mics in every room. And so we ended up passing around the Manly a lot because everybody kind of wanted to record on the Manly. There's always
Ivana.
Right. There's always an interface, a monitor that you can kind of plug your laptop into. We have some Adams. 2 rooms have like monitors and subs. The others are just monitors. Seems to be an Adams. Great. Yeah, like for the consistency, it was great that they were all the same, that everything was kind of the same.
Yeah.
And then, some headphones, a couple of stands, and you just make music.
Quick, I'm gonna have so many geeky questions for you. So then, MIDI keyboard too, drum pads, are those sort of like good
just
elements?
MIDI keyboard. We have a full like drum kit here, and it just doesn't really get used. Everything, all the drums kind of happen in the box, even if they're going to get recorded later by a real drummer. Like it all just kind of, it's one of the first things to kind of get laid down is just some sort of groove. But it typically is just all in the box. Especially, we focus a lot on pop music.
Yeah.
Gritty pop, clean pop, electronic pop, all these different things. So a lot of the drum sounds are coming, from various virtual instruments and things like that. So one MIDI keyboard, and it's not even like a full, it's pretty small, So
the drums can be played off the MIDI keyboard. You don't have to have a dedicated.
Easy.
And then another geeky question. If you had the same speakers in all these different rooms, did you notice a big difference between how they sounded in all the different rooms? And did that strike you? Or does something like that make everything seem to sound familiar and predictable from room to room?
It's fairly familiar, but the room sizes are so different that you definitely could hear it. And these guys ended up taking home a lot of the tracks. They were like 95% of the way there, and then just mixing them on their own systems that they're familiar with.
Yeah.
So it's mostly kind of for the production. They do some mixing, some vocal editing, all that. They take it home, polish it off. So in their own speakers. That seems to be the best way because nobody at home really mixes on the Adams. I have like vintage Adams, and so I love them. But one guy has Barefoots, another guy has what are they called, PMCs or?
Yeah, PMCs.
I think so. They're all very, very different mixing situations at home. So they just took the sessions home and gave them a final kind of polish, and then we were done.
That's cool. Yeah, I have a pair of the Adams, I think that mine are the T5Vs. And they're over on the side in my studio, and I love flipping over to them. So I'll work on my fancy Carl Tatz monitors while I'm mixing, but then as soon as I want to check whether I like that mix, then I just flip over to the Adams and listen to, sort of like right next to each other, not even really stereo, and I find that super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what about headphones? Do you find that you've learned to trust a particular pair of headphones so you can go into any different environment, or do you just sort of like not sweat that detail so much because you're in the composition stage?
I don't really care, I guess, about headphones. Even when I'm recording vocals and stuff, I don't even want to hear myself in the headphones. I just keep like an ear out, even like I'm doing right now. It's such a habit. If I'm in a mix though, I have the A18 in-ear monitors from 64 Audio.
Oh, yeah, right.
And they are, 18 drivers. If I'm in a mix in some form of a headphone, it's definitely going to be those because they're flatter. They're just like very even, very true sound, very exposed sound.
Nice.
Which I love.
Nice. And of course, headphones, I forgot, headphones are for throwing on the floor after your vocal take when you're done, right?
Only when it's bad. Throw it angrily.
The first studio I was at, Robin used to joke about that. I was, Jill Sobule was this amazing, fantastic artist that we work with there a bunch. And he would always say like she would be in the habit of doing a great vocal take. And then she'd just like be so psyched about it, just throw the headphones down on the floor. And he was like, man, we keep having to replace the headphones. And I was like, all right.
Small price to pay.
Note taken. Have many affordable headphones in the studio so that you can fix them and replace them.
Yes.
That's great. Now, what about, so that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, what about your studio now and your place? So you described what it's like in a songwriting camp.
Yeah.
What about back at your place? You've got Logic. What are some of the other tools that you have? Have you set up particular speakers where you're like, this is how I like to work in my own studio?
Yeah. So this time around, when we were deciding how to kind of set up a studio, I obviously did some sound dampening and things like that. I made the whole studio white because I'm a girl and I like to have nice white studio. I've got an 88 key weighted keyboard because I'm, primarily that would be my instrument. And I use the RME Babyface, just like I needed something I could travel with. And it's such a small little interface that it was so easy. And then I have a 75-inch big screen TV, and I sit pretty far back because I have the Adams. They're vintage. They're like S3As or something like that. The big guys. I mean, they're pretty old. Like some of the outside is like peeling off the top. Some of the plastic or whatever they used, but I love them. Because I feel like if I can get anything to sound good in that with like some of the weird harmonics and things that come out of them, that when I plug my mixes into a car, I'm like, this is gold, Yeah. So I have a fairly stripped down. I like to do everything in the box, just because, again, like with outboard gear, if you're traveling, it's difficult to not have your normal sound. I kind of wanted to have my normal sound anywhere I went. And so I also use a Mac Mini. I'm one of the few people that does not use a laptop here. I just had bought the cheapest Mac Mini, and then it was one of those years that you could still crack them open and add RAM to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing
So you're not on the newest M1 or anything?
No.
So this would be a little bit older.
No, the ones I kind of work off here at this studio are, but I have had no problems, 0 problems. And after working on some of the laptops and stuff, I'm like, dang, my Mac Mini from 2019, I do not have the amount of like crashed sessions, all of these things that these newer laptops have. I don't know what the deal is.
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound kind of weak or distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding much closer to professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools, and the best part is that these mixing techniques work for you in any DAW, whether you're on Logic, Cubase, Studio One, Reaper, anything you can think of. If you're ready now to make your best record ever, then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. It's frustrating sometimes. You think I always joke about it whenever something goes wrong in the studio. Turn to my intern and I'm like, get all frustrated. I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe I should just get the newest computer and like upgrade to the newest thing. And and then I was like, oh yeah, no, never mind. I just did that.
Yep.
It's like always the running joke, It's like,
I just did that.
Oh wait, maybe I should pay more for the, the higher level service. Oh no, never mind. I just did that.
Yep. Still crashes.
Well, so cool. So one of the things you mentioned was the 88 weighted keyboard. And that, of course, is referring to like having a real piano action on a digital keyboard.
Yeah.
And one of the songs on your playlist, Roses and Weeds, Part 1, Lucky Scars, it's got this beautiful recording with your voice and with piano. And it just reminded me to ask, your thoughts about recording with a real piano in the studio or successfully using a digital piano. What kind of things, I don't know which one you used for that. It sounds great. But what are some of the benefits and challenges to each, and what lessons have you learned about choosing a good piano sound for something that's really exposed as a recording?
Well, I think the dream is always to record a real piano. We just did it here this week. There's a Steinway here that's gorgeous, but it's all trial and error with mic placement. Like that's a whole different set of skills, and there's things that I want to hear that, like I want to hear the pedal going down and up.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
can we stick a mic down there? I want to hear the realness of a piano a lot of times if I'm going to record it. So I like to use this one in Contact Noir piano, and it's very adjustable. You can humanize it more and add more sounds from the player in a sense, like the pedal, things like that. But then you can also get really crazy with it and have it make non-piano sounds. So it's very versatile.
Right, and that's part of Native Instruments Complete.
Yes, yeah. I love that piano. And then for a while I was using a couple different pianos from Imperfect Grand, I think it was. I mean, that was a few years ago. And what was neat was that they're real sampled pianos. But they don't sound quite so perfect as what, a lot of pop productions are. Like, you hear the human element of it. And so if you've got something like that, that's probably the best way to make it sound like you recorded it, is something like Imperfect Grand. But yeah, the dream is always to record a real one.
Well, you'll have to record on my piano. I've got a 7-foot Steinway right here.
Oh my god!
You'll see it next time you come here. Rockstars, Katrina was going to join us here in the studio, but she's busy writing hit song after hit song at a songwriting camp and giving us her lunch break for this interview, which is awesome. So that's cool. Yeah, I mean, that was always one of the challenges for me, was playing a digital keyboard and then hearing sort of a piano sound come out of the speakers and immediately feeling like something was missing in the connection versus sitting at a real piano. But I agree with you. Playing a real piano, miking up the real piano is I pull my hair out every time. Because like every song and every production might require something a little different.
Yeah.
And so
a different tone. Yeah. Absolutely. And it might not even, you could leave the mics in the same place and play it the next day and it just doesn't feel quite the same. Like, there's just some sort of magic to it. You have to play with it every time, it seems like, but it's worth the effort. Like, I think it'd be really fun to do a session of just like sampling, to have your own samples of your own piano, kind of mic'd from all different places, and that would be really neat.
Yeah,
and then to be able to play it.
That would only take a week.
Just for recording it, not editing it, and then dropping it into some sort of virtual instrument so you could play it. That would be insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing I like about a real piano is you're reminded of how it's all one voice. Like, you're hitting all the different keys, but it's all coming from one voice, which is the piano. And that always felt like the challenge with digital stuff was like, where's the soundboard? How is this note talking to that note and stuff like that?
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think they've gotten better and better. And certainly hearing your recording, I'm like, well, that sounds great, so.
It's
good to choose the right one.
Yeah.
Have you ever run into issues where you used a piano sample and then later you were like, I had to learn the hard way that that's not the way to do it?
There are definitely recordings where I think back, like, I wish we would have recorded something real, just for more of the stripped down raw stuff. Like you said, when it's exposed, I really wish, but that's part of, I think, the process of releasing music is learning and listening back. It's kind of a timeline of your growth a little bit, is hearing those things and saying, I wish I would have picked something a little more timeless versus whatever sound for the piano was trendy at the time, or, like that. Because, in the moment, it's like, yeah, that sounds just like this record. It's perfect. And then you listen back and you're like, that did not age well. And so I love the timeless sound of a real recorded piano. I really do.
Well, in my own journey of like looking for what piano sound should I try and get for this particular artist, I've noticed like there's such a vast variety. It's like Elton John's piano sounds totally different from Randy Newman's piano.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'm like, it really needs to just sound killer like Love Song by Sarah Bareilles. And then you go listen to that song and you're like, oh my God, that piano sound is incredibly extreme sounding. It's like, it almost doesn't sound real, It
doesn't.
So
yeah, we
pop.
just listened to that. I was like, holy cow, how did she get away with this?
Yeah. So it's pretty wild, in fact, we were doing a Randy Newman session this past weekend. And so I was like really studying how to get that to sound a certain way. And of course I mic'd up the piano stereo, but then I went and listened to his original songs and it was like, it's really kind of mono, the whole track sounded mono.
Yeah, it's all preference.
Yeah. So what are you excited about right now? What's like got you really excited about making music in the studio?
I'm excited right now because I feel like, 10, 12 years ago, I did this big push to make a lot of music to survive. Now we're surviving and I feel like we're kind of stepping into the next phase of making music where there's a higher bar that we're trying to reach. It's got to be commercial and appropriate for TV and film and trailers and stuff and so it's a little bit of a challenge that I haven't felt really in the last probably 5 years. It's just, you get really good at something, settling into something, and you become a pseudo expert at it. And then you don't really have a lot of challenges. And so, I'm excited about, doing more of these camps, more pushes, more of these sprints towards making like full projects in a week or two. And we're doing one actually for me, and it'll be under my name for this company. So they kind of have the authority on when it gets released, so I don't even know when it would get released, but focusing a little bit more on like soul pop, which is really more my vein. And I get asked to do a lot more stuff that's like gritty, dark pop, like I'm going to murder you and bury you in the riverbed, but I'm a homeschool mom, guys. Like, can I do something else? So I'm excited about this to flex a little bit more like soulful Adele kind of vibes. That's going to be really exciting. So
yeah, well, it's funny to hear you mention that those are the requests, because when I think about television now, so much of television, when you turn on Netflix or whatever, you see what the latest shows are. It's such a mashup of particular genres. And one of those is like, if it's dark and it's threatening and it's, like the classic long form TV where you throw all these characters out there and like, you're almost at the end of the season. You're like, I have no idea who's a good guy and who's a bad guy,
Yes, exactly.
Do you find that I know you're sort of like steering more towards your what matches your lifestyle, but have you tried to write songs where it's like you don't know who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, and what's that like?
It's a little, as songwriters, we're actors a little bit because I can't pull from any real life experience for some of these things, like I've been married for almost 18 years. So if I had to write a heartbreak song, thank you. If I had to write some devastating heartbreak song, like I have to mentally pretend. And so in a way, because I've been in sync for so long, I picture a movie scene or a TV scene. I have to like picture the scene. I have to picture the characters. And then I'm like, I know the song that can fit there. That's really what I need to see happen. So we're almost actors in our sort of our perspective and our mindset in how to write these songs.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, you were out on the West Coast in Los Angeles. Did you learn a lot about songwriting from actors and from acting while you were there? And B, one of the things I seem to remember from my limited acting experience in high school was this idea of transferring on one emotion onto this other one. So like, you need to act out a part. So you go find something in your own life that might match that emotion and you figure out how to transfer it over there. And it is fascinating, like the idea of writing a heartbreak song. If you're not in an experience of heartbreak, it's like maybe something else in life gives you that feeling and you have to borrow from it and draw from it.
Yeah. Even thinking about really devastating, TV movie scenes that you've seen that really affected you. And, like kind of had the same sort of emotion going on. You are experiencing it, but you're not in it, And so kind of thinking of like how that person portrayed that emotion, what they were thinking, and so it's like art creating art in a way, because I'm pulling from these other mediums to try to help me understand what it might be like to write a song as an 18-year-old going clubbing or something, like it's hard, but we have to put ourselves in that mindset. You got to do the research. Like I just had to do an EP, just like 3 songs. And the request was to do an EP that sounded like Old Town Road. Me.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, what? I do like acoustic pop and, like, why would you want this from me? So I studied, first of all, I read the lyrics, I studied the music, I broke all that down. And I feel like by the end of it, I understood it better. I was much more like, almost like more of a fan because I analyzed it a little bit. And I said, This is how he got to this place. And these are how the sounds that were created because of it. And, and we killed it. It got accepted really quick. And I was like, okay, maybe that's more of my lot in life is that I'm a researcher, I'm a studier, I'm an analyzer,
Nice, nice. Yeah, I can relate to that as on the engineering side of things. I remember early, I came to Nashville. I had about this much interest in country music and rock stars and making a 0 with my hand. You can't see it on the video. But, it's like, but then I got here and I started putting myself in the studio and working on sessions where that was, a modern country, explosive country sound was what was needed on a session. And I learned to try and do that a little bit and then learned how difficult it is to do it well. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, now I really appreciate it because I can't do it. Exactly. I want to learn how to do it,
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's cool. And it's cool to hear you talk about how that goes into the songwriting as well.
Yeah.
It's like push yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
How often are you writing for your own personal outlet as an artist versus writing, as an assignment? And what are some thoughts you have about that? And is it important to strike a balance at all?
I think it's going to be different for every person, but some form of a balance is really important. This last year, I've been a little off balance, writing more as an assignment. I need you to do this. I need you to do X's and O's and that kind of, sound. And then can you do this? And okay, we'd like Katrina to do this. So even though I'm singing on it, it isn't necessarily like 100% me. These songs aren't personally fulfilling in any way. And so I'm just kind of getting back into where I can write. Sometimes you have to kind of pay your dues with a company. And so you got to show them what you can do, and then they let you do what you want to do. And so, this next EP that I get to do for this company that hopefully will be in every TV show and movie and everything, I'm doing what I want to do. It's going to be quality writing, not overthinking it, but also like making sure that it's poetic, which I love. Really great vocal takes, not necessarily just going with the first or second one, really comping a great take, pouring more into that, because that's more fulfilling for sure. Is like, if you are more on the artist side of things, which that's where I came from. I was a performer with residencies. I had an 8-piece band at one point. And I love that still, for sure. Like I love performing, but it does not pay the bills. So I think it's important to find a good balance. Maybe it's, okay, I'm writing a lot for other people, all that. I'm going to perform every Friday night somewhere. Or I'm a sideman playing guitar for somebody every Friday night. I'm going to write a record for me. Or, even shifting how much you write for other people and how much it's your voice on the project. Like that's one way that you can find balance too. So if I don't get to use my voice very much, like I get a little antsy,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that balance too, it's like doing your own thing can feel very fulfilling because you're doing your own voice, but it can also feel very lonely sometimes.
Yeah.
Where collaborating with other people can sometimes feel like it's not really your voice and your thing, but it can be fulfilling to just be with some, unless you're working with assholes, right?
Yes, this is true.
It's not.
I try to avoid that at all costs.
Adam Audio introduces the all-new A-Series line of monitors, featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design, built-in DSP-based room correction, and speaker voicings to allow you to customize your Atom audio monitors to your control room. The A-Series will rock in any studio. Small studio spaces or immersive multi-speaker configurations are perfect for the A4V or the new A7V, the next generation of the incredibly popular A7X. Mid-size rooms and narrow spaces will love the low profile of the A44H, expanding on the A7V sound, or the A77H, a true three-way midfield monitor delivering rich, spacious sound. And bigger studios will love the A8H, a three-way speaker and the pinnacle of the A-Series that delivers extremely accurate sound required for critical listening environments. Get the Atom audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for your studio with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. What do songwriters, music producers, DJs, EDM, TV, and film composers all have in common? They all need incredibly cool sounds that instantly transport the music to the style that they want. This is why Native Instruments is your ultimate toolkit with a massive library of sounds. Whether you want to create hip-hop, indie pop, classic rock, meditation music, pumping dance floor beats, or full orchestral arrangements, Native Instruments Complete Bundle offers you everything you need, from drums, loops, and beats to wild synths, ultra-realistic strings, and vintage electric bass, guitars, and keys. The list goes on and on. I personally love recording real bands in my studio and adding cool drum samples, synths, and futuristic keys from Battery, Contact, Massive X, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid keys, for example. Plus, it's super fun to create a string section for a rock band. Come on, go get Complete Start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples over at nativeinstruments.com and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Some restrictions apply. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Katrina Stone, joining us from just outside Nashville, just another part of Nashville. She was kindly joining us during her lunch break today, so that's why she's not in the studio with us right this second. But Katrina, you ready to jam, shall we?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So I got a few follow-up questions based on what you were just talking about. One of them, you mentioned comping vocals. What does that mean to you? Are you doing it inside Logic? Do you love to comp from lots of performances, or do you hate to comp from lots of performances? And what ninja tips do you want to share with us about comping like a ninja?
Well, I love it. It does take me some time because I love it. So I really dig into it. So when let's say I'm producing somebody else's vocals, a lot of times I'll have them do a couple passes through just how they're hearing it in their head. And then I'll say something like, okay, this time I'd like you to really focus on the pocket. And then we'll do a pass of that. This time I'd like you to really focus on pitch, just so that I have those takes to pull from. And then what I'll do is the last couple, I'm like, I want you to get a little weird with it. You know, if you have any of those Taylor Swift voice squeaks that you come through, like, perfect. If you want to growl, if you want to flip to your head voice, like, we do a few passes of that. And I can usually hear pretty quickly, like, which take is going to be the solid, like the take that I'm using the most of.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got if there's some piece that she didn't get in the pocket, I grab from the pocket take. Because I know that that's there.
Yeah.
And then if there's a pitchy part, I grab from the pitch take, you know. And I love it. I go in typically too afterwards and melody and everything because I really love a good vocal. Like, that's my primary instrument. So working with vocals is like, I really love that.
What's your method of working with Melodyne? Do you like to export it out of Logic and into Melodyne Studio? Do you like to work with Melodyne right in the DAW? Have you found anything that works great, better than another way?
I've done both. I don't know any other way, but because I started in Melodyne so long ago, I export still. Because when I drop it back in there, I don't want it running in the background if I want to cut this chorus and move it to the other chorus, like fly it over there. I don't want any holdups there. I just want a clean Melodyne audio file and then it can go through the rest of my plugins. And I know it's kind of old school. Everyone's using it in the DAW right now. And it bothers me that it's like, it's there and it's thinking while I'm doing other edits,
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I don't like a working method in the studio that leaves a lot of things uncommitted to and sort of relying on too many plugins all at once, especially a pitch plugin where it's like it could change the performance on you accidentally. That feels like leaving something, incomplete to me at times.
Yeah.
The other reason I like working in Melodyne Studio is I just found it faster. It's like it takes an extra moment to get it in there and then to get it back again. But once I was in Melodyne Studio, I just found it was easier to zip around and move around the screen and, see all your vocals at once and stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm an editor. I don't know which, the various ones. I've just always been a Melodyne editor, whatever.
Okay,
that
all
is.
right.
But yeah, it just seems like that's all I'm focusing on at that moment. And so I'm actually making better decisions versus doing it in the DAW where I'm hearing kind of everything else. I just usually pull up a piano so I can reference pitch. And I will just edit and I get a better vocal that way. I just get better tone, not hearing all the instruments, not hearing just the vocal and a piano for reference so that I can plunk around. But,
that's interesting. Yeah. So you can make sure you know which note you're trying to go to and stuff.
Yeah. If something's kind of squirrely, I can find it, Yeah.
It's funny how there are these slightly undetermined notes and melodies sometimes. And and when you're tuning vocals, you get really familiar with that. You're like, wow, this passing tone is quite unique,
It's unusual.
It's unusual. And then it's also funny the times where, the conclusion might be, you know what, that wrong note is the right note.
Yeah. It looks wrong in Melodyne and it sounds right to your ears. You got to trust your ears first,
Yeah. Another thing that I'll take the vocals over to Studio, which I'm guessing is basically similar to Editor.
Yeah.
Maybe it just does more tracks or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll also export the mix without the vocals so that I've got that as a reference to hear the pitch against. But one of the things that's always been curious to me is sometimes when I'm doing that first lead vocal tuning, I don't pick up on some wrong note choices, but as soon as I go and start tuning the double against the lead, if there is a double vocal, then it becomes glaringly obvious that was the wrong note choice. It's really funny how stuff can it won't hit you one moment and it hits you another moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever mess around with auto-tune and the graphic mode and all that kind of stuff?
No, I use Auto-Tune Pro. If I'm recording something for myself and I don't feel like melodyning, I will sing it till it sounds right in Auto-Tune Pro.
Yeah.
A little bit of flex time, or flex tuning in there so that it's not like a hard tune.
Which is, flex tuning is the pitch in Logic, or no, that's the one that's in Auto-Tune?
In Auto-Tune, you've got the timing of how quickly it will, obviously change your pitch.
Yeah.
I don't even specifically know what flex tuning does, but it definitely humanizes it a little bit more. And so you can get a good solid center of the note, but your scoops and all of that seem a little more fluid. It can detect ahead of time when you're about to scoop or fall or whatever.
Right.
And it doesn't tune those as much. So,
now, are you somebody who's very studied in singing? Have you spent a lot of time in your, early on or even today with vocal lessons and training and really breaking down the mechanics of singing and stuff like that?
Yeah, I started a little later than most people. I think a lot of people that became singers started when they were like little kids, and it was always their dream. I started singing in middle school, and I was terrible, not a natural singer, but I was very stubborn and determined. And so then in high school, I started taking opera, trying to get into college. That was the goal.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
learned all these arias for my admissions and all that, got accepted to university, and then did one semester and was like, I hate classical music. I don't hate listening to it. I hate singing it. It feels terrible to my voice. I want to belt, and they're telling me that's the worst thing in the world. And it's only been in probably the last decade that I have found vocal coaches for belting, like for doing what I do for pop, and part of that was living in Los Angeles. It was so easy. So I've trained with a lot of different coaches, some people in gospel music, just trying to clean up runs and things like that. I trained with somebody in Los Angeles when I was singing 4 nights a week, 3 hours a night. I was like, I need to be able to sing this long 4 nights a week. And she really helped me develop more like stamina and showed me how to use my voice differently so I wasn't losing it. So I've trained quite a bit. I really understand the voice.
That's wild. Do you know who James Lugo is?
No.
He's been a guest on the show too. He was a vocal coach for The Voice, I think, out in LA.
Oh, that's
and he's
awesome.
here in Nashville too now. So I'll connect you guys if you
want.
Well, that's cool stuff. I mean, for somebody like me, singing was always just, you were always under the impression singing was just something you either were born with or you weren't, which is not true, There's a lot you can learn by learning how to sing, of course. And then, for me discovering it, somebody's like, oh, there's like warm-up videos on YouTube. You can go just like warm up before you sing. And it's like, even that is like, wow, that made a big difference. And, It's funny. I mean, I have a lot of admiration for, you and people who really put in the time and the effort to sing. My daughter's an amazing singer, and she spends a lot of time and effort singing too.
Yeah.
But singing is just so fun. It's the human voice is like it really is the coolest instrument we've got when we're making records. And it's so much capable.
It's so shaped by so many different things that it can sound completely different. Like, how did your parents sound when you were growing up and they were teaching you to speak? And then how did your biology, change? Like, all these different things play into how you sing. What music did you listen to in your pivotal years? Who were you singing along to when you learned to sing? All those things shape it. So it's like no two are exactly the same, which I love.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to a question about your discography, Katrina. So firstly, you've talked a little bit about mics. So if you want to talk more about having a favorite vocal mic now, and now that you can have what you want, what does that look like? But particularly one of the songs, Soul on Fire, No Flowers, just beautiful soaring chorus in that track. Immediately made me think of like Katy Perry Fireworks.
Oh.
You've got a great airiness in your vocal. And then part of that question, well, there's more questions that go along with this too. One of them is, in writing a song, vocal melody in that particular song goes up in the chorus. And so part of my question is, I think it's an important question to ask ourselves as songwriters, like, how important is it that a melody lifts in the chorus? Can a successful chorus go down from the verse? Stuff like that. Talk a little bit about that song. I know I just hit you with like 10 questions at once.
Well, I'll answer your first one. I really love my Mannheim microphone. I tried out a whole bunch of them at NAMM last year, determined to buy the best one because for me, I do not like the Manley reference mic on me. It's a little too crispy. I wanted something a little warmer. So I have the Mannheim Cream, and it has absolutely changed my recordings. But Soul on Fire, interestingly enough, I decided to produce a whole album by myself. It was, I think, back in 2015. So not an EP, not a single, just like as many songs as I could do by myself. And I had a little teeny tiny studio. And, I listen to it and I think of things I would do different today. But that song, for some reason, is at the top of my Spotify. And I cringe a little when I listen to it because I love the song, but the mix is rough. Because I had
it sounds great.
I had very kind of a limited, I think I had a few cracked plugins. I don't endorse that, but you do what you got to do when you're starting out. So yeah,
we know
so
nothing of such things.
No, they don't exist. So that song, actually, I had built the track first, and I wrote the song to a track I built that I really liked. And that, it doesn't always happen that way. A lot of times I write the song, the melody, the lyrics first, and I build to that. This was one of those rare instances. And I love to sing high. Because if you got it, you might as well like flex it a little bit. And so I just wanted to go that way. If I would have taken that melody lower, it definitely would have been a monster to mix. And so I think this is one of the reasons choruses tend to go up is because the production builds in the chorus. And the only time that it works to maybe drop down lower is if you kind of do a fake out and you have the production drop out to have a really powerful moment with a lower chorus.
Mm-hmm.
But, a lot of times a chorus has more instrumentation, more production, more things that sit in the vocal range that you have to try to get above,
Yeah. OWC is your one-stop shop for flexible drive storage and connectivity solutions for your studio. The Mini Stack STX for your Mac Mini adds 2 additional drives over a Universal SATA HDD SSD bay and an NVMe M.2 PCIe SSD, plus 3 additional Thunderbolt USB ports. The OWC Thunder Bay 4 chassis, built like a tank, gives you 4 hot-swappable 2.5-inch RAID configurable drive bays, plus an extra Thunderbolt 3 jack for daisy chaining up to 5 devices. Or check out the OWC Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock with 2 RAID configurable drives and 7 ports of connectivity, including a front-side SD card reader, 1 gig Ethernet, 2 USB 3.2 ports, a dedicated display port, and an additional backward-compatible Thunderbolt port. Get your studio connected with the Mini Stack STX, Thunder Bay 4, and Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at macsales.com/rockstars. Use the custom link in our show notes because it's a great way for you to help support this podcast. So thanks, Rockstars. I am totally blown away with Isotope Ozone, Rockstars. I've been mastering a lot of my records recently, and Ozone makes it so easy for me to get a fantastic sound. The mastering assistant will help you get started by measuring your track and suggesting all the settings you need to get a professionally targeted result based on the genre and EQ curve of your choice. You can even reference a specific song if you want, using simple yet sophisticated modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting. You simply adjust the settings to your own taste, and it sounds incredible. And don't get me started on master rebalance, which literally lets you reach into the mix and manipulate the vocals, bass, and drums at the mastering stage. My bandmates are pretty demanding of my mixes, but now when I send off the masters for approval, I get comments back like, "Holy shit, pristine, damn good mastering, crystal clear, dude, you're a wizard. Finally, I love my singing, and the drums and bass sound huge." Check out the newest Ozone, RX, and all the other great plugins at isotope.com and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off. Well, it's sort of like imagining yourself in a crowded room with lots of people talking. It's like you have to raise your voice and you have to be loud, to be heard above all those things. So I guess
exactly,
naturally, if there's a lot going on in a chorus, the voice sort of intensifying is going to be the appropriate thing to do. I've wondered about that a lot because I'll find myself mixing a track where the melody goes up and down in the verse, for example. And sometimes I'm like, oh, every time, at some point I'll notice like, oh, every time the melody goes down on that line, I feel like the vocal gets a little buried right there, and maybe you compensate or maybe you don't or whatever. But it was sort of a light bulb moment for me, is realizing that something as simple as the melody, the direction and the note choice of the melody has a big impact on how that part, whether it's a vocal part or an instrumental part, reads in the track and how it sticks out to us.
Yeah.
And like one of the things you learn in singing is we tend to hear the higher harmony as the melody that we're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, well, you educate us on that. So do you think that's really true? If you have a higher harmony and you sort of tuck it back, do we still hear the lower note as the melody? What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
I think so. I think it depends on its stereo image as well. Because if you kind of throw those out to the sides, people automatically, I think when you hear notes going out to, left and right, some sort of like duo or, however you want to do it, people automatically assume that the mono signal, because it's been that way for so long, whatever's straight up the middle is the lead. And so I have a tendency to pan that stuff and never put it directly mono, just because I don't want people to misinterpret that as the melody. But no, it totally
like eyes on me. Ears on
I'm
me.
over here.
Ears on me. Over here.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Well, and then there's other things about just hearing in general and like what draws our attention. So hearing detail in something draws our attention. Volume draws our attention. Even more bass draws our attention. I think these are because we like to talk about this stuff on the show too. It's like, we're about to be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, which is like right in our face while we're sleeping. So we notice it. It's right in front of us. It's a little more bass, a little more high frequency, and probably right front center too. So I guess, ways to compensate for a high melody, a high harmony, making it so that we don't think it's the lead is, like you said, move it out to the sides, maybe darken the top a little bit of those notes.
Yeah.
Certainly cutting the lows of the background vocals is common, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's nothing in there. Just so they're a little crispy and you hear some of the sibilants in there, just like these notes, these kind of things going on. So that
we'll see how
support.
My de-essing does on the podcast after that example.
I don't want to have a lisp.
Hopefully, Rockstars, you heard nothing, which means that the mix was so good you couldn't even hear the S example.
Yeah. So, that you want the vocal to have some support, but you don't want it to necessarily be like, I'm doing a duet with myself, So I tend to either S1 imager, kind of give it a little bit more weird space.
Oh, that's the Waves plugin, right?
The Waves, yeah. Or I'll do, I don't know if it's Antares or Antares, the Duo plugin that kind of slightly splits and phases them and throws one signal out to the sides entirely. I love that one. That's kind of a ride or die. Yeah. And and it sounds very pop when you do that. And you have less chance of screwing it up like with doubles and getting the timing just right. I love that plugin. But that tends to just sound more backgroundy,
Oh, does the Antares also time align the backgrounds?
No, it's
like
the
vocal
simplest.
line?
No, it's definitely not vocal line. It's the simplest little plugin. You could take a single acoustic guitar, like a mono acoustic guitar, throw the plugin on there, and it's thrown out to the sides, and there's like no signal in the center.
Wow.
So
all right, I got to check that out.
It's really cool. If you want to just do one background vocal on a verse, like one double, and have it sound like more than that, but have it be perfect, just sing it perfect once. That way you don't have to do it twice. And then, or sometimes I'll sing the verse an octave higher. My falsetto will pitch it down to the regular octave. It sounds kind of weird and kind of urban. And then I'll put duo on there and it sounds trippy. Sounds like somebody else. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel a drive to freak out the sound of your voice? That's become such a almost ubiquitous sound in pop music, is like, to be honest, it's almost like gender bending in the sound of pop music or something. It's just, we take a high voice, we're going to pitch it down. We take a low voice, we're going to pitch it up,
You have to throw those tricks.
I mean, we don't have to we don't have to make that part of this podcast, but I'm just saying, like, do you feel like that is something that you often feel like, or ever feel like if the voice sounds too real, it's like, oh, we have to mess it up
a little bit. I do think so, depending on the song, and especially if they gave us a reference that has kind of a tricked out voice in it, then I do feel that. And something I've noticed, I do a lot of kind of ad music for Japan, and they prefer a younger voice. And so I use an Antares plugin called Mutator. And I know
Antares.
I can make myself sound younger. I'll throw this on background vocals too sometimes, just to sound so they sound a little different than my own voice. But I can, if it's something for Japan, I know that they will love it if I do that. It's kind of like a little altar boy, from Is That Sound Toys?
Yeah.
Kind of the same idea, but way more control. And just a hint of a younger voice, And so I can kind of get whatever sound I need to get, essentially. But yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And then how often do you manipulate over in Melodyne for stuff like that, or like create harmonies over
Not
there?
often. I'm such a fast singer that I'm kind of like, I'd rather just do this myself, I don't really typically do it in Melodyne all that often, but I do like clean up. I feel like I clean up tone. I can add vibrato, that's some of my favorite stuff to do is like clean up tone a little bit and do a little time correction in there as well. And it just, it makes everything perfect.
When you say clean up tone, you're talking about in Melodyne? And what
I feel like, and it depends on the singer. So I know my own voice very well. I know a few people that I Melodyne for regularly. You can see beyond just the blob that's in Melodyne, you can see where the root is, this sort of pitch drift. And you can see them scooping up to the note. You can see the vibrato going sharp. And it kind of creates this chaos when you listen to it outside of any sort of tuning. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's right, but it's not quite right. And so like finding where you want the scoop to start, straightening out the center of the note, keeping some of the vibrato, but maybe changing it so it doesn't go sharp, so that it's a nice, perfect, like even vibrato, like that kind of thing. It actually somehow affects the tone of the voice a little bit. It just sounds more polished. I don't know how to describe it. Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. I do hear tonal changes in Melodyne when things get manipulated that are interesting. I do wish Melodyne made it easier for us to do those manipulations. I always feel like I'm having to hack my way into a solution.
It's a little clunky.
First of all, who wants to use the word blob for a vocal note anyway? But like having to chop the blob into 5 sections and then move those sections around and then like, do the pitch lever, but from note to note and stuff. It's like, just give me a pencil.
Let me just draw it.
In,
exactly. Yeah. Hopefully it gets more intuitive at some point and can actually understand a wider array of voices.
Have you been tempted to kind of go robo voice on some of your productions?
I have.
I get tempted to do that.
I mean, I think I've done it on some ad libs, so they're not like front and center, I've done it a little bit, but I also feel like, it's such a bummer when you have like a really great singer and then you do that to them.
And it just sounds like
pretty much, because it really makes you sound just like everyone else. So
and I wonder if the interest in doing that really does come, like if you broke it down, you'd look and you say, well, people who can't hit the note just right tend to think, oh, it'd be kind of cool to do that to my voice. Whereas somebody like yourself who really has learned how to sing what you want, maybe it's just like,
I'll just sing it.
Yeah,
I'll just sing it.
I'll sing it. So speaking of people like yourself, do you have anything that you would like to say as a woman in audio who's a songwriter, producer? You've been in the trenches in LA. Here you are in Nashville, maybe in a new set of trenches. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to other women who are listening to the show, or just to anybody who from your perspective of what it's been like there? Have there been some challenges for you? Have there been some things that have just been great? what are some, what, it's up to you. The ball's in your court. Anything you want to say about it?
Oh, no, I'm a big advocate for this because, I think a lot of my hesitance to get into this, it was easy to become an artist because I was like, look at all these great female artists. But my hesitance was this sort of technology understanding. And I thought I was pretty capable. But, when I looked at what these producers did, I was just like, oh, I don't speak that language. I don't understand. I'm too far behind the curve. I didn't grow up doing this like a lot of guys do, even just, playing electric guitar and screwing around with the amp knobs and kind of knowing what EQ is and knowing what distortion is. And, I just did not. I didn't have the language at all. And so I just encourage a lot of women that are on the fence about this. Like if you're thinking about this, if you're an artist or songwriter and you're like, that would be really fun, but I just don't know if I can do it. You are fully capable. I think the breakthrough for me was understanding, first of all, that I really did speak kind of a different language than a lot of the guys. Even just in guys rattling off various plugins and they remember all the numbers that are in the plug. It was 5, 11, 20, blah, blah. I just don't. I remember that it's purple and, I know what it does. And so understanding that and being like, I'm okay with that. Like my brain works a little different and that's great. And then, the first time that I went to a mix with the master session at NAMM years ago, and Sylvia Massey was talking. I think I told you this on the plane, actually.
Right. And she's great. She's so great.
She's so great. And, I think she was working in Pro Tools and she was mixing something she'd already mixed. She had kind of broken it down. And the way that she talked, it was like I was hearing about sound for the first time. I understood. And I understood, and I didn't have to say ahead of time, like, talk to me like I'm a kindergartner. That's so demeaning. But that's how a lot of times I want someone to explain something to me because I'm, kind of more like visual, thinking about the plugin itself, not thinking about the back end of what it's doing, but I want to understand in a different way. And hearing her talk about what she was doing, it clicked. It made sense, finally. And so I think that having that understanding that like you might not fully grasp everything at first, but that does not mean that you don't have a future doing this. Yeah. You just have to find someone that speaks the right language,
Well, I mean, I feel that myself too. Like there's so many times where I'm interested in learning something else. And the way that it's being described is like not clicking with me. And it's being reminded that like, I might not know it yet, but I'm fully capable of knowing the shit out of it if we can get there. It's like, you might have wanted to learn the production side of stuff and what's going on in Pro Tools and things like that. And just because you didn't know it yet doesn't mean that you not only could learn it, but you could, kick ass at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think there have been a lot of guys along the way that have been really awesome, I guess you could say are like allies in this and reframing how I think about certain things so that I understand it. Because I'm very analytical. Like I said, I'm a very left brain creative, weirdly enough. And I want to know this stuff. I really do. But I will go and read forums about stuff. I'll watch videos and I'm just like, I'm Googling this word. What does this mean? And it's like, it's part of the process, I think, for anyone. But I think women tend to get discouraged quicker thinking, because we make up 3% of this industry. Sound
that's even less than the 8% that carries the rest of the industry for recoupable records.
Yeah. So there aren't a ton of mentors out there. There aren't a ton. And there are organizations, Women's Audio Mission, they do live and studio sound. They do a lot of teaching as well, which is really cool. Soundgirls.org. I'm a member of both of those organizations and kind of keep tabs on what they're doing. And again, live and studio. And so there are networks out there of women that are starting to emerge. And there are some really cool influencers out there that are like younger and they're showing you what they're doing in Logic and Pro Tools. And it's like, okay, finally we're seeing some. And I don't think it's like an industry that men are trying to keep women out of. I don't know that we fully understand our potential in it. That's all.
Well, I mean, with anything, it's sort of people get interested in it maybe in their younger age, and then after 10 years of doing it, they might be producing stuff that's good enough that gets seen.
Yeah.
And so if it's like, if it's been young guys learning how to plug their guitar into their amp, or, too shy to go out and socialize, so they're back at home on their laptop learning these programs, thinking maybe this will get the attention of the girls. Then 10 years later, that's all you see as far as who's doing it. So I think it's cool. And I hear what you're saying. I mean, I see a lot more women in audio now. Of course, I'm also like going to NAMM and I'm paying attention to what's going on. But it's cool to see. And I mean, like I'm a secret wannabe EDM DJ, so I'm like, how do you make 4 on the floor beats that sound that cool? And I poke around on the internet and I see, there's like, women that are producing EDM tracks that are super cool with great channels, and it's just fun to see that stuff. So
it is, and there's more access to actually seeing these people. They're seen more now, I think, which is cool.
Right. Yeah, and the schools too. I definitely see that it's happening in the school systems too. So that's cool. Yeah. Let's see. What was I going to jump to next? Oh, yes. So one of the questions that I think is, of course, if we want to be high in the Googles, we should probably mention artificial intelligence like everybody else does. So here's a question for you. When you're doing the songwriting and you're getting into the lyric stuff, there is a certain element of what you're describing that involves getting outside of your comfort zone. Probably if you're doing great songwriting, you're probably having to get outside of your comfort zone every single day. So have you found that things like ChatGPT or any artificial AI tools have been helpful that way? I mean, even before that, there was probably like rhyming dictionaries.
Oh, yeah. It's just another tool. Kind of I've totally used it. I don't use anything directly from it, but I will totally hop on there when I get stuck and say, write me a song about this, just to see another perspective, an artificial one. But I think it's really cool. I mean, I've even thought I would really love to artificially replicate my voice so that in the future, let's say I'm 70 and I don't have a voice anymore or something, like my voice could still be used on tracks for stuff, like. That's
just you're working remotely. They never know how old you are.
Exactly. I can use some old pictures. We're good to go. I'm never retiring.
I'm just gonna put on my website that I hear to 30K and just let people believe it.
Exactly. I think that's a
mixing
good move.
All the way up to 30K.
Yep. I love
that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I've dabbled in that too. And it's kind of a fun experiment.
Yeah.
I don't really have a big take on it yet. I haven't found, I haven't created a lyric that I carried on into a song.
Exactly. It's not there.
But I mean,
yet.
I think it could be like the things that it might spit out could also inspire me to go like, oh, I know what I want to do.
Exactly.
And then just write a different line, which could be really helpful.
It's like having another person in the room that might share a terrible
other people?
idea.
Are you seeing other people out there in the industry using stuff like that in any interesting ways?
Definitely some AI generated cover artwork.
Yes.
Like that's made things a lot easier. Not so much, I mean, ChatGPT, it just does not feel and think like a human. And so It doesn't understand nuance and poetry very well, abstract thoughts. So we're not terribly worried about it from a lyric perspective. I think, I even jumped on one that you could type in various genres, tempos, and feelings and things and make a track. It was the worst track I had ever heard in my life. I spent like an hour just trying to make a reasonable sounding track on this AI music maker, and it all sounded like children's music. It was the weirdest thing. So we're not terribly
because it
worried.
Actually generates the music and stuff.
It does. You tell it a tempo, a genre, some emotive feelings, some instruments that you want in there, and it was so bad. Yeah. It was tragic.
Yeah, it's
so we're
funny.
not super worried.
It's funny how there are a variety of sort of like, AI tools like, it'll turn your guitar into a saxophone, or just there's a variety of stuff out there. And some of it can be so amazing. And on the other end of the spectrum, the stuff that's not amazing is just so bad,
Exactly.
It's just sounds so bad. And that's always been true as a music maker too.
Yeah.
We've had instant loops and MIDI sounds and all kinds of stuff forever. I mean, for a really long time, since the beginning of the computer practically. So there's always been stuff that just sounds terrible. And then somebody comes along and makes a hit song out of stuff that sounds terrible. And you go, oh, I didn't know it could sound so great.
Exactly. It's all about the person putting it together.
Yeah, indeed. Do you ever feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take you years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process that I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, but condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that this will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick. And I'll see you at the front row table of the Grammys. Cheers. All right, let's see. How about talking more about writing with other people? Do you co-write? I mean, I think you're doing it now. What works well or not well in that situation? Do you find others ever write the wrong melody for your voice?
Oh, yes. Okay, I'll start with that one. Absolutely. I have to sing it in the room to figure that out. You write something that's natural to you. So if somebody else writes a melody, it doesn't always work for your voice. It could be a beautiful melody that they're singing. But I'm definitely, I love long, kind of open vowels, things like that, because I have great tone. Yeah. But then I also love rhythmic stuff because I have great pocket. And so those two things, like great rhythmic stuff in a verse and long open tones in a chorus, and you'll win me over. But there's some of the other stuff, like if it's boring and I can't sell it, it's difficult. And so co-writing, I think what's difficult is blind co-writing, where you're like, I'm about to meet this person I've never met. We're going to bare our souls to one another and write a song. Like, that's way harder. I write with a very trusted kind of group of individuals that I know well. I know I can share my ideas. And like, even if it's not the right, I could share something stupid just to get the thing going. And it won't be a horrible, humiliating experience.
Right.
And
because it's like good writing needs to be vulnerable, right?
I think so.
Or great writing does.
I think great writing does, and sometimes if you're writing for like Sync and you're doing like a dog food commercial, like you just got to get the thing done. But it's also like if you're in a room with someone that you don't trust, let's say you're a songwriter and you're working with a producer and you're writing a dog food commercial, they could make you feel horrible about what you're throwing out there for a dog food commercial, And so I think it's important to really trust and know the people you're working with. It's not
even good enough for dogs.
Exactly. It's like you have to, I think you find these pockets of people that you really click with. You speak that language. They don't shoot you down in horrible, humiliating ways, Yeah. Because you're going to get shot down a lot when you collaborate. My favorite line that my friend says, I've started adopting it too, is if he doesn't like something, he's like, I think we can beat that, Yeah. And I'm like, that was very kind. Thank you. We can.
I like to ask him, like, that was great. Do you think we should try and just see if we can beat that one?
See, we would work well together.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I think you already answered this one, but another question I'd written down was just, how do you strike a balance between working solo and with other musicians, producers, or engineers? Do you have more you want to say about that as far as, when it's time to just do your version of something versus when it's time to, I think part of my thinking with that question too was, do you sometimes feel like the right move is to go 90% of the way there yourself and then just turn it over to somebody and let them do their mix magic on it or mastering, et cetera?
Well, it depends on if it's for a project for me or for somebody else. I think I have my hands in so many different things right now that stuff for me, I want to produce, I want to mix. It's more of a personal thing. Like, I just want to know that I can. I want to know that I have not lost that skill amidst all the songwriting, co-writing things that are going on. I genuinely love mixing my own voice. That sounds weird, but I know it. It's familiar, Yeah. And I think that the issue with the balance thing is that other people's sessions and other people's work always feels more urgent, but it's not necessarily more important. And I think we as humans go more for urgency, like, oh yeah, they're coming into town next week. I'm gonna go work on their project for a little while, do some tracks for them or edit their vocals and all that. Why? Just because they came to town,
Right.
And I think it's important.
The accountability thing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, they're expecting me to show up. So whereas if you're working by yourself for your own stuff, you need to sit down and practice songs for a show. You need to sit down and create new music for release, whatever it might be. There is no accountability there, just yourself. And so if it goes on your calendar, like, you can't take it out. It has to stay there,
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And the accountability is like the clock's ticking. It's like, the show's this Friday and I haven't practiced all the songs.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I like to
right now.
Release put a release date out there that seems a little impossible. A new album coming out June 15th or something, and you're like, okay, I got to get to work. Like, that's accountability right there.
Where do you do that kind of accountability? Do you just do it on social media or somewhere?
Yeah, I'll do that. And I haven't released any personal projects in a while. I've done a lot of spec projects. And so I will do that on, social media, typically Instagram. My Facebook randomly got deleted from Facebook. I couldn't get it back.
Facebook. Oh, Mark.
I know. I was like 16,000 fans and they're gone. I typically will release stuff on Instagram. I also have a Twitter that I play with sometimes. That kind of thing. Just even if nobody looks at it, it's kind of like, I know it's there and I need to make sure that I'm releasing music on this date, know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's bold and I applaud that. I do a little bit of that, but only when I'm certain that the thing's going to happen. I haven't been so bold as to, announce that my EP will be dropping on any particular date, even though I really should. I really should. I should go finish it.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So then, let me see. Let me ask you about. So then, what about the co-writing thing? What anything more that you want to say about the challenges of that? I mean, I guess it's hard to be vulnerable with strangers. What about? I mean, I've heard sometimes people say you go into a writing session and it's good to have a bag of little starter nuggets of ideas or something like that.
Yeah, I always have some starters because I'm writing constantly, just in my notes app, any idea, at least words. Because a lot of times in these random pop sessions where you don't know anybody, the melody and the track is getting started at the same time. Words are an afterthought in the pop world. And so it's really, the track is so important and the hook, the melodic hook is so important. So I need to have a backlog of words. And so I can just whip them out at any time and they think I'm a genius. Because
they might stay or they might not even, they might just be placeholder words.
Yeah, no, I mean, typically I'll throw my best words at them and they are great, clever things. They tend to stay. But I can kind of morph my ideas around whatever melody is happening. That's really important. And it's tough too, because initially in Los Angeles, we were doing all these kind of co-writing sessions with developing artists coming in, random people we didn't know. And it was, I kind of swore it off. I was like, I will never, this is so horrible. I just gave this guy my best idea. This this album's going to get shelved. There's no way that this, it's going to go nowhere. And that song is gone now. And it was really like starting to wear on me, all these songs that were never going to see the light of day. And it was too much.
That is tough. I've had that feeling where I'm like, maybe I started a track and I could have finished it myself, but I did it with somebody else. And then I second guess whether what they did, like, do I really want to do that version of this song? Maybe I should do this myself. And then how do you get around that? I mean, sometimes I just remind myself, I'm like, dude, just if you're making anything at all, it's a win.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it depends on if it's like your passion project. I think you should always stick to your guns. If someone else does another version of it and is like, hey, here's what I came up with. It's like, that's really cool, man. It doesn't really fit my vision. If it's something for, sync or for another artist and they're a trusted person on this, then I think at some point you got to trust that person, even if you're like, it's not exactly what I would have done, but they do know, their jazz music really well or whatever. And you got to trust them. But for your own personal projects, like, I think it's important to get what you want,
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned poetry earlier. What are your thoughts about the marriage of poetry and lyrics? Do you have a routine in your life as a writer that is just you, the poet? Is there a part of you that is just writing poetry and books and then drawing from that, for example?
I think that is what you could say I do, because a lot of times for songs, I'm writing the words first and I'm writing them to a cadence and they are rhyming and there's no melody going around in my head. And I think that's weird to a lot of people, that I have all these words with a rhythm, but no, I didn't really have a hook in mind when I wrote these words. I think they're just really beautiful and clever or something. And it started because I had a producer that said at the time, probably 2006, 2007, said, you're really great at writing melodies, but man, your lyrics just suck. And so, yeah.
Sometimes those are the most beneficial critiques in the studio.
Yeah, they never leave you. And I bought a book, and I wish I could even find this book. It was like essentially 365 writing prompts. So I spent a year, one a day, writing, and it would be something random like, write about the color blue. And then it was like, write about exactly where you're sitting right now. And it's like, I'm in a coffee shop. Oh my gosh. And they want you to write thinking about songs. It's not just like writing prompts. They want you to think about verses and choruses. And I've had many songs come out of that. And it made me a way stronger lyricist. And now I prefer the lyrics, honestly. Like,
that's great.
It's more of a skill set that I think a lot of people don't have.
I like that idea of a daily writing prompt as a reason to get out and write. And then it sort of gets you off the hook of having to come up with something original to write about and stand behind it afterwards,
Yeah, exactly.
But every time I've ever done a writing exercise, 90% of the time, the results make me go like, oh, that was so cool. I had no idea that was going to turn out so cool. With my friends, we've always had this thing called poetry scores, where poems have been shared through a group text message, and then whoever felt like it would grab that and sketch out a song to it. And then, a lot of times just the act of following through later as a band in the studio gives birth to this thing that's really pretty cool, and if it's not so cool, oh well, it's an album filler track,
Exactly.
It's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's great, and we'll take on Recording Studio Rockstars, we'll take any encouragement all about how to just get off your butt and write a song and not get stuck on the self-criticism.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's so critical. Like, if I hadn't released some of those early terrible songs, I don't think that I ever would have released the slightly less terrible songs, and then the mediocre songs, and then, she's getting better songs.
The great songs.
I feel like
hits.
I'm getting there now. And it's like, but I never would have released, it's like a ladder. It's like, just put it out there. I still have fans of that early work. And like, I look back and I'm like, wow, that song was really basic. Like, I can see what that guy was saying about my lyrics. It's like, just write, because no one has your perspective but you. No one sees the world like you. No one will phrase the words like you, you know? And I think that's so important is your voice is important. So you have to not only create the work, but then put it out in the world for people to see. And it's hard because it feels like how people talk about children, you know, it's like, oh, this song feels like my heart is beating outside of my body walking around and somebody could hurt it. And it's like, yeah, you'll have critics, but put it out in the world, you know?
Yeah.
See what happens.
Nobody can write like you, not even your AI self, your future AI self.
I don't know. That would be, if it downloaded all of my experiences, then maybe. We'll see.
Just teasing anyway. Okay, we are nearly at the end, but let me ask you this. Mixing. We love that. Do you like to, I guess the question I wrote down was, what's in your mixing template? Because that feels like a good way to ask it.
Oh, I like that. I always have in my template a great vocal chain that I built for my mic. And I know that vocal chains are subjective, but it's definitely some form of tuning, EQ. I love a good CLA 2A from Waves. It just sounds great on females. I don't know what it is. And then some, Valhalla, vintage verb.
Yeah.
I love a good retro slapback delay. So I use H delay for that, which is Waves. I use a lot of Waves.
Yeah. I started using H delay on a recent mix and I was struck by how cool it sounded. And I was like, why have I ignored this plugin for all these years? Why didn't I just get it? It's great.
It's so great. I really love it. And actually the presets are great. Like a lot of times the presets are just weird. No, they're like great presets, Yeah. And you can really manipulate it, get the right kind of EQ on your delay and make it sound really neat. So I love that. I always have a piano loaded up, usually a noir piano, because I think they're really cool. And I usually have a stack of gospel vocals ready to go, like a gospel chain.
So meaning tracks, like when you say a stack, you mean like the tracks are ready for you to just lay your voice onto 12 times?
Yeah, and it's kind of all grouped together. So it has everything I need for it to sound kind of gospel-y. Because if I'm going to do some big quiet vocals, like it takes a lot of manipulation. Setting up all those tracks take a lot for me to sound like different people. And so I'll have that preloaded, usually in my template, because there's a lot of choir vocals on stuff.
This podcast is proud to present Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I master my own records using nothing but plugins. Plus, I take you into a world-class mastering studio, Sterling Sound, to meet with Ryan Smith and hear how he professionally mastered my record, Skadoosh, for release to streaming platforms. That's the music you hear on this podcast, Rockstars. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free mixing course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins and Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even upload to your website if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy to get started now. So this is a mixing template for you. So you've already recorded this stuff, but this is, both. Either way, it sounds like you're thinking about mixing the moment you start recording. So
I do mix while I function. Like while I'm recording things, I'm tweaking pretty much. I'm comping after I'm done with vocals. I'm mixing, my kick before I'm attempting a snare, like those kind of things. Like I tend to mix as I go.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And then there was something I was going to say when you talked about your own vocal template, what works on you. It's an interest. To me, it's a fascinating thing that I've discovered recording and mixing myself versus doing other people is, do you ever feel really aware of how easy it is for you to make a call on your own voice and the mixing of it versus the challenge of making that decision on somebody else's voice where you're like, I don't know, it could be this, could be that.
I
Do you
feel
ever
like
notice
it's
that?
flipped.
You really?
I can make calls way quicker on other people's voices, especially if I know that voice. If we're friends, I'm like, oh, okay, you have never sounded better than you did in this take. This is perfect, and like I know exactly. Okay, you've got that 3.5K baby crying frequency. Like, cut that right out. Like I can hear it. Whereas with my own voice, it's almost, I don't know. It's a little more. It's an always fluid, changing thing. Like how I want to mix it is always like trying to grow and get better. But with other people, I can usually hear it pretty quickly. Like, oh, you would sound great with like a thick, warm reverb because you have such a round tone,
Nice.
But you hear them in the room while they're talking. You don't hear yourself that way. You hear yourself in your head. So it's like, I wish I could step outside of myself for a second and just kind of hear what I sound like just in a room,
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, let me go to some of our closing questions here too.
Ooh.
These are some of what I call the jam session questions at the tail end here. And I'll just ask them and we can go through them quickly if you want. So how about this? When you started out in recording, what was one of the things that you felt like was really holding you back?
Oh, knowing which equipment to buy. I was getting a lot of opinions from a lot of people.
Also
I didn't know
good.
which one was right. Yeah.
How about some of the best advice you remember receiving?
Oh, the most powerful thing that you can say to somebody is no. Because it makes you look unavailable, like you're very busy, and it makes you essentially more attractive to a client.
Right on. How about a recording tip or hack or secret sauce, something that the rock stars could use on their very next session?
Oh, there's a plugin I've been using heavily called Soothe.
Yeah.
And I have been slowly using it on everything. I'm realizing for harshness, for de-essing, for like, it's really incredible. Like that's been something that I recommend for every session to throw on vocals, guitars. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like electric guitars or acoustic guitars?
Electric. Especially if they're like really sitting in that vocal range.
Yeah.
And they're like drowning out the vocals, even
now,
when they're panned.
Do you do like a side chain to it from the vocal or anything tricky like that? Or just kind of dial it into to sort of duck out the same vocal frequency on its own?
I kind of dial it in because I'll look at the vocal first on like the EQ, see where they're conflicting, and I'll usually just, I won't usually sidechain Soothe, but I guess I could. But yeah,
I haven't even tried that yet. I'm usually riffing on this podcast. I'm making shit up as we go.
I love it.
But the other thing that's fun about Soothe is it feels like you're playing with a cartoon the whole time because of the way it looks.
It's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, I've had a chance to meet those guys at NAMM. They were great. OX Sound. I think that's
OX. I wasn't sure how to say it. OX Sound.
I mean,
they are super nice.
Again, I did mention that I'm making stuff up as we go. So,
yes.
How about something that's a hardware tool, something you love to have in the studio, like it just makes sessions better? Anything physical?
Oh, as much as I said I made a lot of money on a cheap mic, I do love having my microphone, my incredible mic.
That's the Mannheim.
Mannheim Cream mic. It's inspiring as a singer. I think that's a big thing for me. As far as hardware, I was like, that makes me really excited. Yeah.
Right on. Any other favorite software tools or whether it's, another plugin that comes to mind or something totally outside of the DAW that's really helpful you for what you do? Or anything just new that you're checking out?
I've been playing a lot with Waves Kaleidoscope.
And it's I think I might even have that, come to think of it.
I think a lot of people say that and then they check and they have it. It's really cool. It's got like kind of flanging, filtering, like it can just make guitars, background vocals sound really tricked out and in a way that you can't quite place what has been done to it. Yeah. That's been really, really a lot of fun. Just like screwing around with that. I love distortion. So obviously like the Sound Toys effects rack.
That was one of my things I was going to mention, Best of Luck has got a cool vocal and synth line riff at the top.
That is
some good ways to create a
sound
hook like that. Distortion on vocals, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but it's got to be the right distortion, kind of a warmer distortion. Yeah, I do love that.
You mean the Decapitator from Sound Toys, that one?
This one had a couple. It was almost more like a chain. I want to say that it was, there's a preset
like
in there.
The whole rack unit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it had Decapitator. I'm trying to remember. It had a couple of things.
Radiator is another good one for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it had a few. It was definitely one of the presets. It was channel strip something one, like one short delay or something. And it's the perfect one for vocals. And then you can just dial it back if it's too much. Like dial back the mix a little. So great.
Well, that's great. And a reminder, rock stars, to, don't overlook presets. They're a quick way to, find a accidental sound that might just work great.
Yeah.
You don't have to build everything from the ground up.
Yes, agreed.
All right. So closing question. This one is hypothetical, and I like to ask all our guests this as we hit the 3 o'clock mark for our time. We're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you get to go back in time and find young Katrina, who's maybe, waiting for the phone to ring from the big record label. And you say, listen, Katrina, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice might you like to go back and give yourself if you could?
Oh, purchase the equipment sooner, and that mixing is subjective.
Nice.
That is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more of a recent, within the last 5 years, I've learned that there are so many ways to get the same sound, right? Not to just
and there's so many ways really to make a song come across that might all be a little bit different from each other still.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, very awesome. Thank you so much for hanging with us in Recording Studio Rockstars. It's been a blast to just chat with you. Where can the Rockstars go and learn more about you? What would you like them to go check out? And then a reminder, we have a link to your playlist right in the show notes.
Oh, killer. Yeah, so you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram, and it's Katrina May Stone, M-A-E, not M-A-Y. You can find me on there. That's where people actually can, they contact me the most, and I engage the most with people is on Instagram. And you can find my music everywhere.
Awesome. And then Rockstars, stick around because we've got I got a special offer for you here at the end of the podcast. So thank you for listening. Katrina, thank you so much for hanging with us. I look forward to having a coffee with you in the studio at some point, or listening to the Steinway, the grand piano, and connecting again. And we'll see you around the town soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: Lewitt, Atom Audio, Native Instruments, Isotope, Spectra 1964, and OWC. And remember, at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, Liz Hulitskaya, and Roberto Oxman de Aragao for additional podcasts and video help. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.